So that was Casey Neistat's video clip, Timelapse, that he does often in his vlog. I think it's pretty cool, and a big part of the reason is because of him. He's made these really cool to me. So what we want to do in this one is create a time-lapse using OpenCV and Python. Now, creating a time-lapse is actually not that difficult to do. It's just a series of images that we stitch together to make a video, much like normal videos are anyway. But what we're doing differently in this one is we are going to be spacing out when those images are actually taken. So normally what you would do is you would record each frame, and that would turn into a final product of a video. But what we need to do is we're going to take several images over time, and then after all of that's done, we're going to run a process that will convert all of those into one video. And then with that, you can do all sorts of things. Here's a couple videos that I did just playing around in my studio. They're not that interesting, but they are what we're going to end up building. Not as high quality as what Casey did, but we will do something in that vein. So let's go ahead and jump into the code. So here's the code we're going to be working off of. This is a fairly straightforward code as far as just recording video using some of the utilities and methods that we've already talked about in this entire series. And of course, all of this code will be on joincve.com/GitHub. Look for the OpenCV and Python series repo, and specifically inside of lessons if you want to see the code that we complete with. I will also have a timelapse.py code. That one will actually be up to date to whatever's current. So if I need any changes done to have this actually work in real life, I'm going to have that code updated where this time-lapse how-to will mainly be for reference for this video. And that's it. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. And what is it that I'm trying to do? Well, what I want to do is I want to take pictures over some sort of duration. So that means over some amount of time. That also means that I have to think about this while loop a little bit differently. So instead of just constantly recording until I tell it to stop, I just wanted to quote unquote record something until some duration happens, until some duration ends. Okay, so I want to change this while loop based off of time. And the way I'm going to do that is by importing two libraries. One is date time, and one is just simply time. Okay, so the time itself we'll talk about in a moment, but date time is, well, we want to start off with now, like what is now, and that's datetime.datetime.now. That will give us whatever time it is right now and where we are or where our system is. It increments by the millisecond, so it will be pretty accurate as far as the actual time. That part's not as important, but it is important to know. And then we'll have to do a finish time. So like, when do we actually want to end? So I'll just say now plus datetime.time delta. So the actual time amount that we want to change, right? So the time in the future. So we'll say seconds, like how many seconds do we want this to stop in the future? I'm going to start out with just 20 seconds. Now I can actually put this in as a variable itself, so I will do that. I'll just say seconds. Or rather, instead of seconds duration, so I'll say seconds duration, and I'll put it equal to 20 seconds, and then we're going to use that instead. So then I can just change this parameter at any time. Oops, that should be seconds duration. There we go. So then what we want to do is this while loop is going to compare the current time, whatever that current time is, which is actually not now. It would be the other, we actually have to call now. So datetime.now, we have to call that every single time we want this while loop to run, and we want to make sure it's less than this finish time. If you know of a more efficient method than this, please let us know in the comments, but that's essentially what I'm going to be doing here. So I'm checking what the time is right now, and I want to make sure it's less than whatever that finish time is. So it's less than 20 seconds in the future. And once it is less than 20 seconds, it's going to do something. So if I save this, I can actually run it. Let's open up PowerShell. And I'm going to open up into my SRC folder where I have timelapse how-to.py. So Python timelapse how-to.py. I hit enter. and it should just run for 20 seconds. I'm not going to necessarily need to talk for 20 seconds long to prove that to you, but I'm going to just so you guys can see. I mean, you can absolutely do this on your own, and actually talking for 20 seconds without really talking about anything, it seems to take a lot longer than I would have hoped. Okay, so there it goes. It stopped. The video actually stopped, and that's because of this while loop. So that's in contrast to how this break method works, right? So I still could have broke the video. I still could have pressed Q and it would have stopped like every other time we use recording video. So what I just showed you is actually a way to record a certain duration of video too. That's kind of cool. That might be useful in the future. It's good to know about it. But now what I want to do is, instead of recording video right away, what I want to do is I want to capture an image. I want to actually save an image. So inside of my image directory, I want to save it inside of a new file called Timelapse. I'm actually going to delete this folder because this is likely what yours would look like. And I'm going to go ahead and give it the timelapse _img _dir. And it's going to be images / timelapse. And of course, I want to make sure that this exists. So the first thing is I'll just go ahead and say if not ospath.exists of this timelapse image dir. I'm going to go ahead and create it. Now this is actually crucial. So we'll do os.mkdir. So this is how you can create a directory or a file if it doesn't exist. You just have to look it up. So this is actually critical because OpenCV won't make this folder for you. You have to make it yourself. And if it doesn't exist, it just won't do anything. That might change in the future, but as of now, that's what it does. So now what I want to do is think about how I'm going to be creating these images. So I'll go ahead and just say I equals to 0, and I'm going to use this I as an iteration for the name. So down here, I'll go ahead and say file name equals to, we're going to do a string formatting here, and it's going to take in 2 arguments. One of them is the last one, which would be the I, so, you know, the actual iteration value. And since we're doing that, we're wanting to do I plus equals to 1. So we want to actually add 1 every time that we create a new file name. And then I want to grab that directory. So that's that timelapse image dir. And this is actually where it's going to end up. So, I mean, if you wanted to change this folder to being somewhere different than your project, you would have to make sure that you set up the paths correctly. That could come into some issues that you might run into. So using like os path dir name, those sorts of things, or absolute dir, those sorts of things are actually really critical for if you want to change where your time-lapse images are going to be stored. Just keep that in mind. So now that we've got our file name set up, all I have to do is write an image to it, and that's cv2.imwrite. So imwrite is just writing an image. You pass in the file name and then the actual frame that you're going to be writing, much like what we did with the video. But cv2imwrite just writes the frame as what we designate. In this case, it's taking in that file name, so it saves it as a JPEG. So I can save this and run it. What we're going to see is a folder being created inside of images, and then we should start seeing actual images come in right away. So here we go. It's running, and I mean, I can look at it, but I can also see these time lapses, right? It's getting a ton of them, and that's because of how it actually records these time lapses. I already have well over, well, it looks like 100 images itself already in here. So let's actually look, open container file. And yeah, in that short duration, I have 193 images. That's a lot, right? So we actually don't want that many images. So how many images do we want? Well, this is where you're going to play around. You're going to play around with how you want to store these images. Now, something you should know is that the way that OpenCV works is it's going to read the frame as you give it to read it, and it's going to write it when you tell it to write it. So if I set a time interval to wait, it's going to wait, but the camera is still going to be on. So in other words, I can do something like this, time.sleep, and then I can tell it to wait a number of seconds before it records another image. So let's say, for instance, I want to just do seconds between shots, and I'm going to just do 2 seconds. Okay, so every 2 seconds it's going to snap a shot, and I just put it in here with this sleep. So this time.sleep method, it will actually do that. And if I run this again, it's going to change all these images. So instead what I'll do is I'll just delete that folder just to make things easy on me for right now. So I'll go ahead and save it, and we'll run it again. Time-lapse how-to. It's going to take a second, and it's not going to be a fluid image because of that like sleep method that I did. Instead, what it's doing is it's only taking some images of me talking. This is not your computer lagging. This is exactly how it's supposed to look. So if we look in our time lapse, now we see those images. It's the same ones. There's 7 of them now. I quit it out, of course, but now we're a lot closer to actually having an actual time lapse. So what I'm now going to do is no longer show that image. I probably don't want to see that choppiness myself. There's not a whole lot of reasons to actually see that choppiness anyway. So now that I've got this, what I want to do is turn this into a video. So I want to turn all of those images in this directory to a video. Now what I'm about to do could turn any images into a video. So perhaps down the line we might want to have this as a utility method, which is one of those reasons why I'm having the final time-lapse code being different from this lesson code, because I do intend to change it. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm gonna import something called glob. So we'll import glob. This is a built-in Python library that helps us do something pretty cool. And that is, I'm gonna just come in here and say image list equals to glob.glob. And well, it's essentially just like this file name. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, bring this in here, and instead of using that iteration number, I'll just use a star. And this actually will return all of those images with JPEG as the trailing, file name. So you could do this with other files as well. But this will give me a list of those images, which you could print out and see if you'd like. But the main thing here is we're grabbing that same directory. Wherever that directory is, we want to grab that same thing here. And then I want to sort these things. So I want to make sure that they're sorted, right? So I want to make sure that I'm using the images, the oldest images first, and the more recent images last, because that's how the time lapse would work, right? And I want to ensure that this happens by using the sorted method that Python has built into it. And we'll use the image list, of course, so all of these files. And then I'm going to use the key osPath.getMTime. And this key is related to when it was modified. So get the modified time, which in our case, the modified time and the create time are the exact same. So that part doesn't exactly matter. Now, of course, if you were to go in and actually manually change some of these images, it might kind of mess with this a little bit. But what I'm doing that just won't matter, because I actually won't have that as a possibility, as you'll see in just a moment. So now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and say for file in sorted images. Now I'm going to go ahead and say image_frame equals to cv2.imRead of that file. And this is actually, we say that it's a file, it's really the image path, right? So it's not an opened file, if you're familiar with how Python works in general. It's just the image path, which we can print out and see. This might slow things down a little bit, but let's just print it out and see. And then finally, all I need to do is out.write and image frame, right? It's this. We're calling this now, but it's down here. So it's after we go through all of the time-lapse related stuff, and then we sort all of those images and then make an actual video out of it. Now, I know that you could actually do these things together. So you could actually write a image and then add it as the out method as well. I don't actually want to do that, because in some cases, I might only want those images. In some cases, I might not want to make a video out of them. It's kind of up to you. So I wanted to separate those two processes out. And the other part of this is, what if that you were running this whole thing for like 4 days, and at the same time you were also trying to, write the video, you might have a ton of images and a huge video right next to these things, and that could cause some issues. So instead, what I want to do is grab all of those images, save all those images somewhere, and then convert them into a video. And then the final step is if we want to actually clear out these images. So what I'll say here is clear images equals to true. And I'm just going to put a condition after this and say if clear images, then we'll just do for file in image list. Then we'll do os.remove file. Okay, so one of the questions that you might have is like, here's another one. Why are you removing it after this loop? Why not do it in the loop? Well, if there's some issue with writing the video, I don't necessarily want to remove those images. That's the reason. So let's go ahead and save this and we'll run it. And this time I'm going to just do a 5-second duration, and then the seconds between shots I'll actually do 0.25. So it's a quarter of a second. This will look a little bit closer to a video, but it does allow me to see this in action. So keep your eye on this time lapse over here towards the end. I'm going to run it, and it's going to take a lot more pictures. Notice that the frame is not even showing me, but now it's jumping in those pictures, and then what do you know? We see those paths as expected, and then finally we can take a look at that time lapse. It's probably going to be kind of weird, but there's our time lapse, right? So it's really fast, and it's really fast because of how we did it. If I wanted to change this in seconds between shots, and I did like, I don't know, 5 seconds between shots, and then I changed this to 50 seconds, I'm going to go ahead and run that now as we explain a few other things. But while that's running, we see that these are the actual file paths. It's not the image itself. So going back in here, that's the actual path. It's not like open file and read bytes as file. It's not doing that. So if you're familiar with that method, it's not doing that. It doesn't actually open the image until we call it with OpenCV. And OpenCV opens the image that's ready for OpenCV usage. That's why you use IAMRead instead of that open method that's built into Python. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But, well, I mean, this is nice, but I want to make it into a method. I'm just going to go ahead and say images to video, and I'm going to take the out method here. I'll do an image dir, so where the directory is, and then finally, whether or not I want to clear those images out. So I'll go ahead and then just tab all of this stuff in. And the reason I have this out method is because of where I'm going to be writing this, right? So I want to write it to something, and I'm putting this in the method so then I can just call it like images to video out the time-lapse image dir is that. But notice I called the actual argument img dir, so we need to change that one too. And then there we go. So we've got our time-lapse image out. And then, of course, if you wanted to keep the images, you could say clear images equals to false. And now we have a method that takes a directory of images where it doesn't have to be in where we actually do this time-lapse. So by now, I should have that video done. Let's take a look. And it looks like we had some corruption issues happen. It's possible because I was saving things while this was running, and maybe that's why. So let's run it again. And I'm just going to cancel things out and then completely run it again. And there we go. So now it's going to actually run through. I don't think it's going to have any issues creating the video. It might, but it's actually creating the images. And again, it's doing it every 5 seconds. It's going to create a new image. And then eventually it will stop, and then it will hopefully convert those into a video, but keep all those images because we didn't clear them out. Now, if you don't clear them out, you're going to have to think about how to change this iteration. Something with glob, you're going to want to go to the very end, grab whatever that last item is in these sort items, grab whatever that number is, and figure something like that out. I'm actually not going to do that because I don't intend to keep my time-lapse images because I really just want the result from the video. Now, I will say a couple things. If you have the idea that if you wanted to take more pictures and make almost an actual video out of it, you can slow that down or slow the video down by changing the duration of the video. So if you opened up a video editor, you could actually slow the duration down enough to where it looks like a time lapse. Or you could speed it up quite a bit also so it looks like a time lapse. So that's often what you'll see too. So a lot of creators, what they'll do is they'll actually record a normal video and just speed up the video. And with that speeding up, it actually naturally gets choppier, at least to the eye. But this is actually how a time lapse is done. Okay, so now that most recent one was created, I open this up. It is super fast, right? There's actually, because there's not that many images. There's 9 images, so it's less than a second long. But it happened over 50 seconds. Like, it literally happened over 50 seconds. So you could leave this, you know, pointing outside for 24 hours. You might get pretty big images. So do keep that in mind, right? So like I have the resolution set at 720. So you might, if you're going to do a really long one, you want to make sure that your computer's ready to handle it, or you just bring that resolution down and it will actually store the images like that. You could also literally resize the images every time when you write the frame itself. Thanks so much for watching and all your support. If you want to see more Python and OpenCV, let me know in the comments below what you want to see. What is it that you're trying to build with OpenCV and Python? I'm super interested in this package, so I definitely intend to do a lot more as well. And of course, if you want to subscribe to get everything, make sure you go to joincfe.com/YouTube. That's a quick way to get to our YouTube channel because for whatever reason, entrepreneur is hard for me to spell sometimes. Anyways, thanks so much for watching.